This is the Rainman. He's a serial killer active in the town of Crystalpine Grove. He only murders on rainy nights, and tonight is a rainy night. We'll be following the story of Suzie while we try to determine more about the Rainman, and maybe we'll make a little use of time travel along the way. Here's Suzie. She lives at home with her parents and works at the local diner on the evening shift as a server. Suzie's parents have left for the weekend to go on a trip. Mom reminds her to make sure to lock the doors. Good advice, honestly. Suzie does a quick routine, brushes her teeth, grabs her purse, turns off the alarm clock that got set to the evening somehow, grabs her snacks, and heads out the door to work. On her way to the bus stop, her neighbor, Mr. Craven, greets Suzie and warns her a heavy rainstorm is coming through tonight. Make sure not to be out too late. Continuing on down the street, her boyfriend, whom she's having a spat with, pops out from behind the trash can. He apologizes for something with another girl, Megan, and swears she's just a friend. Suzie, annoyed, blows him off and heads to the bus stop. Before the bus arrives, however, rain starts to come down several hours earlier than predicted. Suzie boards the bus and heads into work. While Suzie is at work serving diner guests, a man named Detective Parker inquires, "Seen any suspicious folks around here lately?" Suzie suggests that a diner is a common place for strange folks. The detective is working on the Rainman case and informs her that all of the victims had come through this very diner. Another diner guest sitting in the back corner makes weird comments to Suzie. "You look exactly like her, just as pretty." "Best be careful, miss. He takes girls just like you. Previous waitress found out the hard way." He creeps Suzie out and she chooses to ignore him and continue serving the other diner guest. Suzie goes to wait on a new guest who just arrived, only to see that it's Andy. "Andy, you can't keep showing up here," sighs Suzie. He orders food, but Suzie insists that he leave immediately after eating. After a few more hours of working, things slow up and Dave sends Suzie home to ensure she catches the last bus. Suzie heads out, the rain now in a downpour, runs to the bus stop. She arrives too late and the last bus drives off without her. Suzie has no real option now but to walk home. As she passes back past the diner, she sees Caleb, one of the diner regulars, outside chatting with the creepy man from before. Caleb empathizes with her and gives her his umbrella. The creepy man Caleb is conversing with offers Suzie a ride, but hints that it's an innuendo invitation rather than actual help. "I'd rather walk, creep," she says in rejection. Suzie begins the walk home. Not only is this a route she's barely ever taken, it's dark and pouring down rain. Even though she has an umbrella, the water splashes into her shoes and the wind blows rain onto her. It's creepy out. Every little sound from traffic, nature, and including dogs have Suzie on edge. After walking for a while, a strange van pulls up beside Suzie. It's the same creepy guy from the diner. She's on edge, but he appears to be a bit more empathetic this time. He offers a ride, and what seems to be a sincere one. Suzie is boiling over inside with uncomfortableness. After pondering for what feels like eternity, she listens to her gut and declines. He shows nonchalance and drives off. Suzie walks for what feels like eternity. She has her umbrella, but the most it's managed to do is keep her head dry. As she passes a bridge, she hears whistling and sees a figure ahead under a streetlight. He's wearing a big black raincoat, and Suzie can't make out any of his features. Suzie is overwhelmed with anxiety and panic. This was a mistake, she thinks to herself. I'll go back to the diner and ask Caleb or Dave for a ride. She turns tail and walks back. After walking for a few minutes, the streetlights flicker and she spots the same figure from before. "What do you want from me?" she screams. The figure says nothing and simply draws out a long blade. Suzie runs, but she doesn't last long, for he is just faster. He slashes at her and knocks her unconscious. Suzie awakes sometime later. She's groggy and her head feels tingly. She quickly jolts awake as she realizes she's hanging upside down, suspended by a rope, her head fuzzy with all the blood rushing down. She looks down at the ground and sees an overflowing bathtub beneath her. She glances around her and sees what appears to be the setting of a sewer. She spots the hooded figure. Suzie doesn't understand why he's doing this. He speaks to her strangely. "You know damn well what you did to me. All the blood is on your hands." Suzie struggles with her bindings but makes no progress. He pulls out a familiar blade and whispers, "Farewell, mother," and cuts the rope attached to Suzie's feet. She falls head first down into the bathtub. There is nothing she can do, and she inevitably drowns. What if Suzie made a different choice somewhere? Could we change her fate somehow? Let's give it a rewind and see what we can do. After pondering for what feels like eternity, she goes against her gut and accepts the ride. After a couple of uncomfortable minutes, the creep speaks up. "Call me Joe. Listen, sorry about my behavior at the diner. I'm not really a people person." He goes on that he didn't mean to make his comments to her at the diner. It's just that all of the Rainman's victims were young brunettes like herself. Joe drops Suzie off at her house without incident. Before she gets out, he offers her a lighter. With the way the rain is coming down, you never know if the power will stay on. Suzie makes the way onto her porch and is startled by Detective Parker. He immediately starts asking interrogative questions. "What are you doing out here in the cold night and in the rain? Just a little odd, don't you think?" He continues. Suzie manages to defuse him, and the detective eventually relents, and Suzie retires to the warmth of her house. Suzie eventually dries off and relaxes on the couch to watch a TV show. The phone rings and disturbs her. Suzie gets up to find only creepy, heavy breathing on the other end. The caller offers nothing else, and Suzie hangs up the phone. The phone rings again moments later, but this time, the caller participates. "Hello, Suzie. What is your favorite scary movie?" Suzie immediately recognizes the voice as her good friend Jessica. When she inquires about the harsh, heavy breathing, Jessica is clueless. "What breathing?" she asks. While in mid-conversation about her future with Andy, the phone line disconnects. A few moments later, a knock at the door reverberates through the house. Who could it be this late of night? Suzie, on edge, cautiously walks to the door and slowly peers, only to reveal Andy. Suzie mulls over if she should even open the door. Suzie sighs. Andy has been frustrating to deal with and has complete disregard for her boundaries. She can't help but hear him out though. She opens the door. "What are you doing here?" she demands. "I was just walking by, Suzie, and I saw some creep lurking around the house." "Please trust me," continued Andy. "This guy was..." Suzie screams at the scene in front of her. She slams the door hard, the wood splintering against the frame. Tears run down her eyes, her face frozen in shock. She snapped back to reality as the power cuts off. She remembers the creep from the van before. He had given her a lighter. Susie's brain immediately went to her dad's gun safe. She needed a way to defend herself. She heads upstairs and hears the whistling of the rain in the wind and feels a chilly breeze on the upper floor. He must have climbed up the house and came in through the window. Suzie can hear footsteps thumping on the floor. She walks slowly, not daring to give away her location. She makes it downstairs and into the garage and finds the ammo. Memories of her dad's gun safety teachings wash over her. She can do this. She heads to the front door and she quickly aims the gun onto the Rainman. He pauses for a moment. Should she shoot or run? Suzie can feel the texture of the gun's grip in her sweaty palms. She takes a deep breath and fires the gun. The bullet tears into the Rainman. He gasps and Suzie realizes that she's in trouble. She had only managed to hit his arm. She runs out the door in the moments while he's stunned. She tries to steel herself as she sees not only Andy's body outside, but the detective also impaled to the tree. Suzie runs down the street and the Rainman bolts out the door behind her. She kicks her feet to the ground as fast as she can, adrenaline pumping through her body. Even still, he's gaining on her, blade at the ready. He gets close and reaches for her. Mr. Craven stands before them, rifle at the ready. Blood drools from the Rainman's hood, and he falls to his knees. Mr. Craven had heard a gunshot, and being a neighbor defender, he immediately came outside with his gun. The Rainman's reign is over. We still don't really know anything about the Rainman, though. We're here for the whole story, so let's rewind again and see if we can figure something else out. Suzie can feel the texture of the gun's grip in her sweaty palms. She takes a deep breath and runs. The Rainman, this time not stunned by a gunshot wound, immediately runs after her. Since there was no gunshot, Mr. Craven is not there to help. The Rainman catches up to Suzie easily unwounded. He knocks her unconscious. Suzie awakes in a place we've seen her before, hanging upside down in a sewer above an overflowing bathtub. Suzie is hysterical. She pleads for answers. Why her? Why Andy? You killed my boyfriend, shrieks Suzie. Ex-boyfriend, boomed the Rainman. That idiot didn't even give you an umbrella like I did. Caleb, she whispers. But why? Caleb pulls down his hood. You know what you did to me. Caleb rants on, not making any sense, until finally he says, farewell, mother. He cuts the rope. Suzie falls. As she drowns, the faint sound of whistling can be heard beyond the water. Well, we learned the identity of the Rain Man, but I kind of got Suzie killed. So let's Suzie sighs. Andy has been frustrating to deal with and has complete disregard for her boundaries. Suzie slouches on the couch, defeated with the day. The local news comes on, but she's too tired and irritated to reach for the remote. The news anchor reveals that new information about the Rain Man was discovered. Detectives had managed to trace the Rain Man to his first victim, Mary Baker. Due to how mangled her remains were, it took a while to be identified. Mary had been found in a bathtub. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? And the resulting murder had seemed more personal than the others. Mary had just been released from the local psychiatric institute, where she was admitted after drowning her own teenage son. Her son's name was Jason Baker. He was unresponsive with no vitals for 8 minutes, but paramedics arrived on the scene and managed to revive him. He went missing not long after the incident. Police are unsure but are interested in the possibility of connection of Jason Baker and the Rain Man. The news anchor continued, but the words were mostly distorted in Suzie's ears. She couldn't take her eyes off Mary Baker's picture. They looked really similar. Similar hair and style, eyes, figure. Suzie's heartbeat pounds in her chest, the blood thrumming through her body. She slowly and quietly goes upstairs to check on the sound. She feels a cool breeze coming from her parents' bedroom. She softly walks. The bedroom window is open. Her thoughts are interrupted by the phone. She answers it and a voice speaks. "Hello, Suzie. Why don't you take a good look in the mirror?" And then hangs up. Suzie is confused and a bit concerned. She makes her way to the closest mirror in the house to find the words, "Hello, Suzie," scrawled in what appears to be blood. The trepidation is too much. Someone is in the house. When she gets down the stairs, she hears whistling over by the kitchen. She looks over her shoulder to see him, the Rain Man, staring at her. He makes a dash for her. Suzie flees to the garage and slams the door behind her, locking it. She searches quickly for anything to use as a weapon and settles on a large screwdriver. Suzie readies herself. Should she face him head on or flee through the garage door? Suzie sneaks out the garage door to find Andy outside. "I found a dead cop outside your house. I knew you were in danger." "You just happened to be around when my house is getting invaded?" shouted Suzie, demanding an explanation. "It's not me," yelled Andy, defending himself. "But let's run to the police station." Suzie deliberated over it. Should she even trust Andy? Andy had always been there for her. The only real thing he had ever done wrong was related to Megan. However, she couldn't trust him. "Stay away from me," screamed Suzie. Suzie runs down the street and encounters Caleb waiting at the bus stop. Now, you and I both know that Caleb is the Rain Man, but Suzie doesn't, so I may have just doomed her again. Suzie tells Caleb she was heading to the police station. "Good idea," he reassures. "Let's take my car." They get in his car, but Suzie doesn't recognize where they drive to. Caleb gets out of the car and Suzie follows. "Where are we?" she asks. Caleb tells her it's the lumber mill and the Rain Man will never find them here. Suzie stops. "I never mentioned the Rain Man." Caleb whistles, realizing his mistake. "Then be still, mother," he screams as he lunges for Suzie. Suzie remembers she had grabbed the screwdriver from the garage. As he lunges for her, she grabs hold of his handle and plunges it deep into Caleb's torso. Caleb collapses and the Rain Man's terror ends again. Suzie survives, but I'm not convinced I can't get her a better ending, so let's do it again. Andy had always been there for her. The only real thing he had ever done wrong was related to Megan. She could trust him. They run down the street and around the block to the police station. As they come up, Andy is stabbed by a waiting Rain Man who had cut them off. With no time to scream or mourn, Suzie runs. The Rain Man pursues until Suzie manages to get past the main gate and slam it behind her, locking it on the inside. He stares at her through the bars, his figure hard to see in the rain. Suzie rushes into the police station, her face soaked from a mix of rain and tears. Suzie tells the officer inside everything. He goes to investigate, and after a few minutes he returns. "I'm sorry, miss. There's nothing outside. No body of your boyfriend either." Suzie is hysterical, but the police officer assures her that she can be protected and they will try to find more. Oh, that's not a great ending. Do it again. Suzie tightens her grip on the screwdriver, the handle leaving cylindrical imprints in her palm. As the Rain Man bursts into the garage, Suzie spears him. Unfortunately, in the mass of black that he is, she only manages to hit his arm. He readies his other arm and backhands her, Suzie slamming to the ground. The front door rips open, cracking loose as Andy kicks the door. He rushes in behind the Rainman and delivers a hard blow to the back of his head with a wooden baseball bat. The Rainman slumps to the floor, the blow killing him immediately. Andy and Suzie reconcile, their relationship stronger through the trauma they fought. Okay, that's kind of a happy ending, but I want to know more about the Rainman, so... Suzie decides to hide in the house. She quietly walks over to her room and feels a knife slash at her flesh and falls unconscious. She awakes, suspended in the air of a sewer, above an overfilling bathtub. Uh-oh, I guess that was a bad move. Suzie looks over at the Rainman. She feels at ease after seeing the news earlier. Maybe she can talk her way out of this. I know why you're doing this. I remind you of your mother, don't I, Jason Baker? She addresses him by name. The Rainman rips his hood off, revealing Caleb. God damn it, Suzie, don't use that name. Caleb composes himself. Yes, mother, my name is Caleb now that I have been reborn. Suzie tries reasoning with him. She tells him that killing her won't fix his pain, even if what his mother did was cruel and not fair. Caleb has a breakdown and storms off. You're ruining it. Suzie remembers Joe's lighter and uses it to free herself by burning the rope. She walks down the sewers towards the sound of whistling. Suzie has a strange sense of protection. Maybe Caleb won't kill her now that she has broken his ritual. Caleb sighs. That's what my mother whistled as she held my head under the water. Suzie empathizes with him. Leave, he directs her. As she turns toward the ladder, he tells her, you will never see me again. Suzie ascends the ladder and finds herself in a lumber mill outside of town. As she walks toward the exit, a police car arrives. How did you find me? Asked Suzie. Your boyfriend, the officer responded. He saw the license plate of the car as he drove off with you in the trunk. Suzie recants the story of how she escaped with the police officer. Suzie escaped, and the Rainman was never seen again. Okay, so kind of a happy ending, but the Rainman may have just gotten away with a bunch of murders, but maybe he'll also not kill anyone at the same time. But I also don't have any other options for taking this story in a different path. And I think with that, Suzie's fate is sealed there.